Hello and welcome to the fourth edition of Anyone's Game. And this week we're joined by our two lovely panellists, Jay Patel.
Hello.
And Rob Porter.
Hi, Sarah.
And we also have producer James keeping us all under control. Say hi, James. Sorry, that was very mean. He's multitasking away there. He hasn't got time for all of this chit-chat. But today we'll be covering the ATP Tour Finals, of course, ongoing this week at the O2. Also, the RFU, is the chaos quite as bad as everyone's making it out to be? And what might be next for that organisation. And we've got lots of football, I'm sure you'll be glad to hear. Rob is our expert on that, and we'll be coming to that later. Also, a bit of cricket, some sad news if you're a Sachin Tendulkar fan. So let's kick off with the ATP Tour Finals. The tennis, Jay, you were there earlier in the week. Tell us a bit about the atmosphere.
Yeah, I've been there twice actually. I went last night to watch the Nadal-Tsonga game, and I was there on Monday night to watch Djokovic beat Berdych in a very close match. Yesterday's atmosphere was great because all of it was both players had a lot on the line. Whoever lost that match would go out of the tournament, and actually it was a game full of errors. There were maybe a few spots of brilliance from both players, but again, I think a lot of the players are out of form. A lot of players are out of form. The only person who's actually playing to possibly his best is Roger Federer, and we saw that earlier in the week when he showed an absolute masterclass against Nadal. The atmosphere's been great. Yesterday was a packed house, no empty seats, and it was pretty torn. But I think a lot of the audiences, especially in the UK, they go for the underdog, and there was a lot of backing for Tsonga. But it's been a good tournament so far. I've been slightly let down by Djokovic and Nadal, and obviously Andy Murray had to drop out through injury. But I think we could be set up for a good final. I think Federer could clinch it. I think he's playing well, he's confident, and he's got 2 titles under his belt coming into this tournament. So Sunday's final looks set to be a good one. Mm-hmm.
Good tip. And of course, we had Murray pulling out earlier in the week, as you mentioned, with a groin injury. Nadal's blaming fatigue for a lot of the problems that he's had with the tournament with his form. It does seem to be a major issue for players, the amount of matches and tournaments that they have to play, and the scheduling seems to take a real toll. Do you think that's going to sort of roll on, that issue, through the next few seasons?
There is. There's been obviously talk this year that Andy Murray's mentioned himself that players wouldn't rule out a strike or going on a strike due to the amount of tournaments that there are in a year or they're scheduled to be part of. And with the pace of the game, how hard these guys are hitting the ball, it's obviously going to have an immense strain on their body. But actually, tennis players in 2011 are in the best sort of physical shape that they've ever been. They go through such rigorous training, and they've got the best sort of teams, well, especially the top players working behind them. Whereas I am sympathetic, it is all sportsmen suffer from injuries across their career. But tennis players are earning a lot of money. They're playing a game where actually there's a lot of incentive to keep going through the tournaments. And they don't have to play every tournament. Roger Federer took a month out earlier this year, came back so strongly. And like I said, he's won 2 titles back to back. And he's playing brilliantly at the O2 Arena this week. It's just one of those things they have to get to grips with. People decide not to play the Davis Cup matches. Andy Murray's decided not to do that in the past. It's a personal choice. I think there is a lot of congestion in the schedule, but again, they don't have to play every single tournament. It's up to them.
And of course, Nadal took 5 weeks out to prepare for the ATP Tour Finals this week. Of course, didn't help him too much in the end. He's obviously still suffering a bit with a loss of form. Do you think perhaps it's just a case of players getting a bit clever about their scheduling themselves and making sure that they're hitting form at the right time? Because obviously that's a huge part of being a professional athlete, is, getting the timing right, making sure you're hitting peak form at the right time.
It is. Well, if you go back to Djokovic's amazing winning streak at the beginning of the tennis season, he was putting himself through just the Masters tournaments and the big tournaments. That's fair enough. You might have been playing tournaments back to back, but actually, again, if you look at the team around him, he's in amazing physical shape. He's got coaches, he's got physios with him, he's got medical staff who are all looking after him, and they wouldn't risk him getting injured if they knew that he couldn't handle the pace of the game. That's why you're seeing a lot of players being very clever with their gameplay, trying to use more slices, trying to move their opponents around the court a bit more, instead of them doing a lot of the the heavy work. That's why Djokovic, Nadal, Federer and Murray are so good at what they do, because they dominate a game and they actually make their opponents move instead of them doing a lot of the chasing.
Do you think there's something special about the atmosphere of the O2 Arena that makes players like Tsonga kind of perform a bit better?
I think the ATP World Tour Finals are a completely different sort of field game, because it's just the top 8 players, and they're one-off matches. Anything can happen, and again, it's the end of a long season. If you put these at the beginning, right at the beginning, obviously Djokovic would have been able to fire past all of these guys. I think players like Tsonga, players like Thomas Berdych, they come to a tournament like this. They know they're good enough because they're in the top 8 in the world. They wouldn't be there if they weren't classy players. They're taking their opportunity, and they've been found lucky. Yesterday, Tsonga found Nadal not on his top form. Therefore, you can go into it knowing it's one match I have to win, and then it's 4. It's not like it's a 2-week Grand Slam where you have to play consistently, day after day, to get through the rounds. Whereas where players like Nadal, Federer, Djokovic get better as the 2 weeks go on. There's only a 1-week tournament here, so anyone can turn up and win.
Do you think players like Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, I mean, they've won Wimbledon, they've won the US Open, the French Open, massive majors, and they come to the ATP World Tours, and it hasn't been around so long, it hasn't got the prestige as Wimbledon does. Do you think they're not quite as up for it as, say, Berdych?
The end-of-year championships have been around since the 70s. It's just now it's called ATP World Tour Finals. The branding's changed all the time, but tennis has had for a few decades now tournaments at the end of season where you have an end-of-season champion which feature the top 8. It's just now it's called ATP World Tour Finals. I don't think after the Grand Slams this is the most important tournament in terms of prize money. If you go through undefeated, you actually earn more here than you do at Wimbledon. So there's a lot at stake here for these guys to come to play. Otherwise, I don't think Andy Murray would have dropped out unless he had a serious injury. These players wouldn't turn up at the end of a very, very busy year if they didn't think this was important. So it has got a lot of prestige. But I just think it's one of those things. This tournament, you can't have a consistent form all the way through the year. You have dips and lows. Djokovic has had an amazing season for a huge part. Now Federer's come back. Actually, he's the one in form, and Tsonga's playing himself into form as well. I don't think Nadal would have actually been able to win this just because he was playing badly. I think Murray could have had a shot because he has been playing well in the sort of second half of the season. Djokovic has been a surprise, but ever since the US Open, he's kind of suffered from shoulder, back, and neck injuries. So you can see that coming through with the amount of unforced areas he's been playing. So, come on, everyone, cards on the table. Who have we got down to win? What's everyone's pick for the winner? I mentioned it before. My winner is Federer. I think he's still as classy as he's ever been.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very boring debate, but I might have to agree with you on that one. I think he's just coming back to something near his best, and when he is at his best, there are very few people who can get close to him. I
don't think we can rule out Tsonga. I think he beats him. He's beaten him a couple of times this year already, I think, and he's playing really, really well. He's beaten Nadal, and I think it could be a really, really good when those two play each other.
Yeah. Well, it's funny to say because if they actually both make it to the final, it would be very interesting because Federer played Tsonga in their very first match in the group game, and it was close. Tsonga could have won that match. He let Federer back in the game again, full of errors. He's got a big serve. He has amazing ground shots, and he was running Nadal all across the court yesterday. So it'll be very interesting to see if they actually come back again against each other in the final, what Tsonga does differently to beat Federer.
As you say, it's a final that, thinking back to the beginning of the season, most people probably wouldn't have predicted, but a lot of things change as the season goes on. It should be a fascinating one. Let's move on, shall we? And let's talk about the RFU. It's hardly been out of the headlines all week. If you listen to most people, it all seems to be falling down around itself, going to hell in a handbasket. It's all doom and gloom. I think, Rob, you've got a slightly different view on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, Rob Andrews come out this week and he says that English rugby has hit rock bottom. Brian Moore has added on to it. The former England international Brian Moore has said that it's only going to get worse, and it's a very gloomy outlook on the future of English rugby. And I don't think anyone can look past the fact that the World Cup was an unmitigated disaster for the England side, for the English setup. Players like Mike Tindall, who had very good reputations going into it. Marrying royalty, and now it's not. And Martin Johnson's left as well, so it's not looking good. But I think it's a little bit short-sighted. I think it was less than a year ago that England won the Six Nations. We were looking very promising. I was actually quite optimistic going into the World Cup because we've got some really good young players coming through. Tuolangi, of course, the guy who hasn't covered himself in glory either, but he is looking very, very good.
He dived straight into the squad, didn't he?
Yeah, very good, very good. Chris Ashton and a whole load of other young players coming through, looking really, really promising. And we were looking like we might threaten the world's top order. However, it has gone very wrong, and you can't look past that. But I'm not really sure that being so negative about it is going to be helpful. I think we've got to pick ourselves up. It's been a bad setback. We've got to move on. Martin Johnson, I don't think anyone could argue he had to go, but we've got to now make sure that we make the right decision and bring the right person in to bring us out of this. And those young players are still there. We've still got good players. Mike Tyndall, he's getting on a bit, but he's no worse a player. Maybe that's a poor example. I don't know, but because he is probably at the end of his career. But I think we don't need to be so negative. Is my thoughts on that.
And of course, there's been a lot of people saying this is a kind of structural problem with the RFU, that the administration's kind of falling apart. But those people forget that yes, at the very top level there have been a lot of problems. But you look down all the other setups. Got Saxons, Sevens, the women's team, of course, all the age groups. And actually, England have been really successful in the last few years. It's only really at the very top level where there are problems. And yeah, that's obviously the area that's going to get the most attention. But to say that it's a kind of institutional and administrative crisis, I think is probably going a bit far. I'd really agree with you there. I wanted to ask you about one of the options that's been started to be discussed with the England manager's role is something that's sort of borrowed from football, the idea of bringing in a sort of caretaker manager, maybe to see the team through the Six Nations and then look for a permanent replacement from there. What do you think about that idea?
It's an interesting idea, and it's been known to work for football, but obviously rugby's a whole different setup. I mean, Clive Woodward found that out. It's a very, very different, very, very, very differently run sport, but. It's work. I mean, if that is the situation we're in, that that the RFU don't feel that it's the right time to bring in a permanent manager for whatever reason that is, I think there are plenty of decent candidates out there who could take it. But if that's what they feel, and they feel like bringing in a caretaker manager, it's a gamble. But who am I to say if it doesn't work or not? It could work.
In terms of a lot of sports, I mean, a caretaker manager tends to be somebody who already is well associated with the club or the country, has the backing of the players, and sometimes that doesn't work. It's the same kind of mentality if he's been a coach and he gets on really well with the players. When you're a manager, that kind of breaks down. It's not really what you want a manager to be there for.
I think that was part of the problem that people had with Martin Johnson as well, was that the qualities that served him really well as a player, the kind of incredible loyalty and that sort of thing, kind of let him down on the managerial side. And of course we've had this leaked report into England's performance at the World Cup this week, and I think that was one of the real issues that was brought up, was that the coaching and managerial setup just wasn't really functioning as it should be. Sorry, Jay, you wanted to come in on this.
Yeah, I just think I'm not defending any of the actions of the England players at the World Cup campaign in New Zealand. A lot of the things that they did was unprofessional, but I think what's playing out here with the RFU is just a perfect example of how England is so negative and gets on your case when things go bad. Don't forget, the last World Cup we were finalists. The one time before we won this, and it's just the same when England went to the Football World Cup in 2010 when we came back and we didn't do as well as we did. The media and also a lot of the fans wanted to look for a scapegoat. It's just what we do. The players, a lot of the time, aren't the ones who are answerable. Like in this case, people want Rob Andrew to go. Martin Johnson's gone. Actually, a lot of the players didn't stand up in New Zealand to play to the best of their ability. And as much as you can find a scapegoat and say Martin Johnson has to go, Rob Andrew has to go, there are obviously that could be the case. But these players are being paid a lot of money to do what they do. And they're not performing, so that has to be answered on. But again, it's just in any sport, with cricket, with football, with rugby, whatever it is in England, we're very, very good at coming down heavily when something goes wrong.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think there is a bit of a tendency towards knee-jerk reactions in this country. I think that was partly what you were saying, wasn't it, Rob?
Yeah, I don't know if it's is it a cultural thing? I don't know. It's the media.
I think it's cultural. I think it's just imbibed in everything that we do, because we set our teams such high expectations, and when they let you down, you come down, and everyone is looking for someone to blame. And Martin Johnson was one here, and a lot of people are now blaming Rob Andrew, and they have to go. I'm not saying it's right. It's something I probably do. I'd do as well. But it's just, I think it's part of the culture here. It's not, you build people up to knock them down.
That's true. It's very much part of the culture in, a lot of the media and amongst a lot of fans as well in this country, is that we set incredibly high expectations, and probably a lot of the time quite unrealistic expectations of our sports players, managers, teams, and when they fail to perform, it's it's always easy to look for someone to blame straight away, and someone who needs to be got rid of.
I've got a little bit of theory. It is football based.
What's theory?
It's football.
Is it the Ricky Sprager theory? Because that's what I was alluding to.
What's the Ricky Sprager theory?
Well, he comes in, they'll jump around with him in post-match interview, and then 2 weeks later he's down in the dumps, and the players hate him.
It's a little bit different. It's my own theory. I think that in 1990 we had a fantastic World Cup campaign. This is football. Fantastic World Cup campaign. 2 years later, we didn't. 1992, 1994. Awful, because our hopes have been put up. We think, we're going to win next time, and then everyone by that stage, everyone's like, it goes on a negative attitude. Everyone thinks, England are rubbish, whatever. We'll take what we can get. 1996, we get to the semi-finals of Euro '96, and then everyone's hopes get up again. And 1998 wasn't very good, and 2000 was much worse. And so it seems to be going that. And I think if we just a bit more. Just expect a bit less, maybe.
Yeah,
I think that's exactly it. And we expect a lot of our players, because we're so lucky in this country that we have such talented sportsmen who are world class. But the media plays its part, fans play their part, and previous tournaments play their part, and you can't help but heap so much pressure onto these people. And then if something goes wrong, then it's the head coach, or the person at the top who gets the axe, not the players.
Just like to remind listeners that anyone's game did predict Rob Andrew would go, so the clock is ticking for him, because he's been right so far. And Swedish coach Martin Jonsson is still here. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to some football, shall we? We've got lots of football to talk about. First of all, the Champions League. Both Manchester clubs struggling this week, and of course Chelsea as well, on the verge of going out. Rob,
you're going to get in trouble with Alex Ferguson by saying that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he walked out on an interview because the journalist suggested that both Manchester clubs are struggling in the Champions League. He was happy to admit Man City is struggling, but Man United, of course, they're not struggling.
Oh no, of course not.
Of course not.
Well, we're not.
We're sorry. we're sorry, Sir Alex.
Well, they're doing much better than Man City, who it's weird with Man City now. I'm trying to get my head around it, because they've got a world-class squad, and the way it's going in the Premier League, it looks like they might run away with it. But in the Champions League, it just hasn't clicked. Napoli are a good outfit, so are Bayern Munich, both very good sides. But Man City, the squad depth they've got, the players they've got, should really be doing better. I don't know if you can put it down to experience. It's their first season in the Champions League, but they've still got players with Champions League experience in their squad. Balotelli, Toure, they've all been there. So why is it so different now they're in a light blue shirt?
I think it goes down to the Premier League's defensive record this year. The top sides haven't been as strong as they have been in the past. If you look at Chelsea, if you look at Arsenal, Man United ourselves, we've had a lot of injuries in the back four. So it allows a team like Man City, who are great on the counter-attack, to push through and to get their quick goals. And actually, if you look at their backline, they've got the strongest defence, along with Newcastle. But whereas now they're actually playing teams in Europe who are very strong at the back, but also have that a very attacking minded side. Napoli's got a great lineup going forward. You've got Marek Hamšík, you've got Edison Cavani, you've got Ezekiel Lavezzi. So actually, they've got players now. Their forward players like Balotelli are struggling to get past a strong Italian defence. The Italians are known for their having a strong back four.
So are we sort of thinking that Man City are so great when it's really the defence they're playing against, the Premier League's defence, basically?
Well, if you look at all of their matches, including the defeat that they handed to Man United, their defence was shocking. In the fact, you've got quick forward players who can break very quickly after a corner down the other end. And if they get past your back four, there's no catching up to them because they've got the speed and pace. And I think the reason why people aren't doing so well against Manchester City is because their back four is so strong. And I think whereas in Europe, the test that they've been facing against Bayern Munich, who are playing really well, and Napoli, they've kind of shored up both ends, and so Manchester City have got to come up with another way of dealing with that.
All the players you mentioned for Napoli, Jay, I mean, they're all on relatively low transfer fees or buyout clauses. All Cavani's under 20 million, Hamzik's under 20 million, I think. And these are players who could move to the Premier League.
Well, I think there's been a lot of interest in Hamzik in particular. I know Manchester City and Man United are both, well, according to speculation, looking to get him down into the Premier League.
I know a lot of United fans who want some of those Napoli players. They looked very, very good against Man City. And Man City are top quality, so it says a lot for the Napoli side they've got out there at the moment. But I think I still think they'll qualify. I'm gonna put my neck on that.
I think you're onto something, Jay, when you're talking about Man City weren't prepared for Napoli's kind of counter-attacking pace on the attack. Particularly because Mancini's from Italy. Presumably he watches Italian football. You think he'd have maybe judged it a bit better?
I just think that the way that the Premier League's been panned out, they haven't had any opposition yet in terms of who've really tested them. No one's been there to actually play in supreme form. It's in terms of one of the out of all the years that have happened in the last few years in terms of Premier League, defensively, teams are leaking a lot of goals. And for a team like Manchester City, who've got an amazing Arsenal up front, it's perfect for them. They weren't expecting Napoli to kind of stand strong and to help and to defend the score.
Yeah, when I said they still qualify, I actually meant Chelsea, which I think it's probably time to move on to Chelsea. I don't think Man City will qualify.
It's a nightmare as a Chelsea fan. God knows what's going to happen when Man City players.
Well, yeah, I mean, Chelsea are looking very weak at the moment, I think. I was a big fan of David Luiz when they first signed him. I thought how exciting he looked, and he still is very exciting, but often for the wrong reasons, unfortunately. I think a lot of people are pointing fingers at the manager, of course, as they do in football. Well, and yeah, it's standard, isn't it? But Andre Villas-Boas, he's only 33. He's got a relatively he hasn't got the Jose Mourinho factor, I suppose is what it is. Mourinho comes in and he immediately starts winning for Chelsea. But I think a lot of people forget that the way Mourinho played was very, very defensive, and Villas-Boas has clearly gone out there to be a more attacking side, rightly or wrongly. But defensively, Chelsea, that's where they're letting themselves down at the moment. But I think they should stick with him, personally.
You think they should give him a chance?
Why not? He's hardly been there.
He seems to think he'll get a chance.
Well,
he seems provocative comments.
He's been saying he's very confident, although it's hard to know how much of that is kind of smoke and mirrors.
But you just don't know with Abramovich. How many managers have you been through in the last few years? You've had Ancelotti, you've had Avram Grant, you've had Gus Hiddink, you've had
Scolari.
You've had Mourinho, and now you've got Andre Villas-Boas. I think he should stay. I think he should be given more time to develop and to be able to kind of bring in the players that he wants. He hasn't had a chance to do that. Maybe in January he'll start bringing in new players to shore up his defence.
I've got to disagree with you there. I think he's brought in Lukaku, Romeo, Mata.
But they're young players who need time to develop, and I think in the future they will actually have a good impact, hopefully. But in terms of people coming to fit straight into the team, he hasn't really got anyone. It's an ageing side, Chelsea.
I think the view when he arrived was certainly that he was going to be a kind of a long-term acquisition for the club, because they'd had this kind of revolving door over the past few years. I think most of the fans were sick of it and wanted someone who could be in there for the long term. It'd be interesting to see whether that idea still holds. And of course he's talked a lot about his footballing philosophy, how he wants Chelsea to be a more attacking side. But I think it's a valid point that perhaps because of the philosophies of the managers who were there before him when Chelsea were a much more defensive outfit, perhaps he hasn't got the players yet to match that philosophy. And the argument, as you were saying, Jay, is should he be given a bit more time to bring in those players to form the team as he wants it, and then maybe we can judge him from there.
Chelsea's just all a bit messed up, to be honest. If you look at Ancelotti, he won the Premier League and FA Cup double in his first year, and then he got sacked the next.
Got sacked in the tunnel.
Yeah, Chelsea all relies on the mood of Roman Abramovich. If he doesn't like you, he might like you one day, the next day he might not, and that's your time to go. I think in terms of the way the club's run, it's not great for team mentality. I'm not sure the players don't like getting used to one manager, then seeing them out the door the next and trying to get used to another one. It's not a healthier environment. Follow the books of Man United. Have a manager for 20 years. See how many trophies you can win.
I think there's more than just the manager issue at Chelsea at the moment. I think a lot of the players are either past their sell-by date or just don't look interested. I've held out my...
with a good goal in midweek.
Oh, yeah, but come on, he's not the player he used to be, is he? Let's face it. He's not. What is he, 34 now? And I think I watch him. He looks leggy. It was a decent goal. But for the rest of the game, he didn't impress me that much. But then when he's not firing, Torres isn't firing, and I think that's the main issue. He's a monkey on Villas-Boas' back at the moment because he's 50 million, and he feels like he should play him and he ought to play him, but he hasn't. He's been very, very poor, and you think he's going to get better, but he's just not.
What AVB has to do if he sticks around, he needs to build a team around Juan Mata. He's their best player. He's their creative force. Lampard's losing it. Sorry, not losing it. He's got a couple of years left.
That rank's got to go.
He's got
Jay Patel speaks out.
I know he's not losing it. He's still a quality player, but he's got a couple of years to go. Mata's the young person in the team with creative skill, and you can see actually the effect that he's had on Torres. Torres is playing much better now. He's got someone like Mata in the team. That's my opinion. I think he needs to start building a team around a new bunch of players and allow John Terry and Frank Lampard and Didier Drogba the last few years in the game, and then they can go.
Yeah, producer James is just making the point that one striker who's on great form at the moment is Robin van Persie, very much the star man for Arsenal, their captain, of course, and being given that responsibility seems to have done him the world of good.
I think it's made a big difference. The players like Fabregas and Nasri leaving, is that now he is the star of the show. I don't think he's got a better player, but he is standing out more because he is by far Arsenal's best player, and his scoring record's unbelievable. He's the best player to have in your fantasy league team by miles at the moment. Every game he plays, he scores, and he's a class above the rest of the Arsenal team at the moment, I think.
Removes a lot of uncertainty as well, doesn't it, around the squad when you've got issues hanging over you like the Fabregas and Nasri issue at Arsenal, like the Tevez issue at Man City at the moment, seems to be overshadowing a lot of what they're doing. And of course, rumours today that he might be moving to AC Milan in January. Apparently he's been having talks with them, but the old wage bill is still a bit of a sticking point, maybe not surprisingly.
Is Milan closer to Buenos Aires or something?
I don't think the Tevez affair has overshadowed what's happening with Man City in the league. I think Mancini handled it correctly, and he sent a message out to the rest of the players. That sort of behaviour just doesn't work, and I think the whole footballing world's kind of done that. And the fact that Tevez has gone off and he's missing training practices and he's going to Argentina when he wants to, I think Mancini's done really well to keep a hand on his players and showing, well, this behaviour is not going to be not going to stand for this at this club. And you can see that in the play. Tevez is old news now, I think. I think it's just the fact that where he's going to go next is kind of just dragging along. I think
anyone cares that much anymore, do they? No.
I think Mancini's done well. He could have had a kind of Galacticos situation at Man City where you've got a lot of egos and a very difficult man management situation. And I think you're right, Jay, he seems to have handled that really well. I think the Tevez issue maybe actually helped him with that because it showed all the other players that I don't care who you are. You know, if you're not going to fall into line, then that's it.
Really. I also don't think there's many managers in the world who could turn Mario Balotelli into a hard-working goal scorer, you know. I think he's worked miracles, Mancini. I've got a lot of respect for what he's done there.
The problem with Carlos Tevez, and it goes back to Manchester United as well, he doesn't like being part of a team, or he doesn't like accepting that sometimes he might have to be part of squad rotation. He doesn't like being on the bench. That's why he left United, because he didn't feel Ferguson was using him enough. He was perfectly happy in the Manchester City setup when he was playing every single game. But with a squad like theirs and the amount of competitions they're in and the ambitions of that club, he has to... Well, and if you look at Balotelli and you look at Dzeko, you look at Aguero, they're much happier. And I think what Mancini and the club have been clear to say is that if you're at this team, there are going to be moments where you're going to have to sit on the bench and you're going to have to play your part, because this is we're going to have to rotate the squad. Tevez wasn't happy; he refused to come off the bench. But with the Van Persie, I don't think it's great that it's a one-man team. Great, he's playing well, but their defence is still shocking, and they're trying to score more goals at one end and then trying to counter out the fact that they're leaking loads of goals. And he still hasn't signed a new contract. We don't know if Van Persie's going to leave. He's upping his value, his transfer value, and he's doing a very good job. But whether he stays or not, it depends on if Wenger stays or if Wenger brings in any other quality players.
The problem Arsene Wenger's got at the moment one of his players starts, becoming world class, like Nasri. I mean, Fabregas has been brilliant for a few years, but Nasri sort of really upped his game last season in particular. But the moment that happens, transfer speculation starts immediately, and now that now the precedent's been set, Nasri and Fabregas leaving, I think that really has made a real big difference to the future of Arsenal. And
you get the feeling that what's keeping Van Persie at the club has been his shocking injury record over previous seasons, and now that's gone, his goal-scoring record might take him elsewhere.
But if again, like, he's had a torrid past with injuries, but if that comes back again after Christmas, when it comes down to the crucial stages in the Premier League, there's no one at Arsenal to replace him or to score goals.
No.
Chirac, there's no one.
But then, is that the most pressing concern? They've still got, they've signed Per Mertesacker over the summer, and I just think he's terrible. There's no getting around it. He's not very good.
It's a good sign that they've got for Marlon back. I've always rated him as a quality player. I think he's got to play himself back into form, and if he takes control, then that's what's needed for Arsenal.
All right, let's move on to Team GB. This is a footballing issue that's been sort of rumbling around for a while now, and now it seems like David Beckham might be on his way.
Well, yeah, he's just won the league with LA Galaxy, and there's lots of speculation on where he's going to go. Probably PSG, Paris Saint-Germain. And also Stuart Pearce has come out today, in fact, and said that he wants him in the Team GB team.
Along with Aaron Ramsey
and Gareth Bale. Those two are more understandable. I think David Beckham will be 37 by the time the Olympics begins. There must be better options, I think.
I think the theory is that he'll be a kind of a senior player, a bit of a figurehead. But, am I missing something, or is that kind of the manager's job to manage the players? It's not really what the players are for. They're not supposed to manage each other unless something's gone very wrong.
Don't forget Euro 2012 is straight after the Olympics. None of the big English players are going to sign up. Scotland, the Scottish FA, the Welsh FA and the Northern Irish FA have said they don't really want their players to take part. I don't think Scotland's players would take part. Obviously, with Wales not going to the Euro Championships, Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey are their best players by far. But actually, I think Beckham's more there. I think he's still got the passion. And I think in terms, if you're an under-21 or under-23 squad, to have someone like David Beckham playing alongside you is still an inspirational thing. A lot of those players would have grown up with him, and he would have been their icon. Or he would have been their icon. I don't think he'll be playing every single game. I think the under-23 squad are hugely talented in just the English team alone. But I think also it's a ratings attraction. If you've got a worldwide phenomenon that like David Beckham in your squad, then not just people in this country will tune into that feed when the Olympics happened, but countries in America, around the world, in Asia, that's pulling in a lot of ratings.
Do Team GB fans really care about that? I don't think they do. They want the best team.
Not Team GB fans, but in terms of a global aspect, Beckham's still huge. He can pull in huge crowds.
Great news. They're going to be marketing it well.
Yeah.
Yay.
And I'm saying for sports fans, that's not a massive thing. I don't think Beckham deserves a place in that sense. But actually, if you look at the wider context, you can't ignore that.
I was going to say that in terms of ageing right wingers, you can't get past the fullback. I don't think there's anyone better than David Beckham. But for LA Galaxy, he has been playing a sort of Makelele role, kind of spraying the ball around. So maybe he does have a part to play.
By no means is he going to play every single match in that tournament. Anyway, he'll play sporadically.
A 10-minute cameo, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's the main thing. I think it's just there to liven up that aspect of the Olympics. And
does it need livening up that much? Is it? I mean, it sounds a bit desperate, isn't it? Sure, he just brings Zinedine Zidane back or something as well. I've heard Bobby Charlton can still.
Being slightly pedantic, I think. But
I just Stuart Pearce on, he's there.
Football is not really seen as an Olympic sport, and I think a lot of people have said that. Even I remember hearing Gordon Strachan saying that football shouldn't be allowed to be in the Olympics. Actually, it's one of the most low-profile sports. If you going back to just the attraction feature, not for football fans themselves, but Olympic fans, global fans, Beckham's still a huge pulling. He's still a huge pull.
All right, and one more football story. We're hearing goal line technology might be making an appearance in the Premier League as early as next season.
Finally.
Well, if FIFA finally make a decision. They've got 9 systems being tested at the moment. Decision to be made probably in June. So we'll have to wait and see whether that actually
Keyword
happens.
being probably. It's a joke, really. I think the fact that we're in 2011 and after all the incidents, including Lampard's, that have happened before, the fact that goal line technology hasn't been brought in with the money that FIFA has at its power, it's weird, and I really dislike UEFA's bringing in goal line officials. They don't have the power to whistle for fouls or anything like that. They've got 2 extra people they've got on a field.
Don't seem to be doing a lot.
Yeah,
They've got flashing sticks.
Yeah.
well,
They are a waste of
that's
space,
fantastic if you're a fan of flashing sticks. I'm personally not.
As producer James obviously is.
I think it's a non-debate. I think everyone wants it.
Certainly
just gotta happen,
in this country, I don't think there'd be many people who would argue with you. We've just been helpfully reminded by producer James that the last F1 race of the season, the Brazilian Grand Prix, is coming up this weekend. Looks like Mark Webber's currently fastest in first practice. That's still going on. Given that the title was wrapped up a while ago, is there still a lot of attraction? This race still appealing for anyone?
No, not personally.
I think the big story is Jenson Button, isn't he? He's battling away for second place. So maybe for some sort of British fans, it's still got a bit of a pull. I think maybe it's disappointing that the title isn't anywhere near going down to the wire.
Vettel went out in the first corner of the
So was I.
Abu Dhabi. It was great. It made a race of it.
I don't know about you, Rob. As a sports fan, I like a contest, and the fact that this was so one-sided this whole season, and Sebastian Vettel winning pole and then winning each race, and the fact that Mark Webber wasn't even able to keep up with him. There wasn't even a contest in between the teams like there was last season when they were, who's more favoured, Seb or is it Mark Webber? Something needs to happen to the other teams. Need to either chase up, and I think it's boring this season. I really have.
Brings you back to the Schumacher days a lot. Reminds me a lot of
where every season was a bit of a procession.
Same thing over and over again.
These efficient Germans.
Yeah,
too consistent.
But Schumacher actually took some chances. I've really enjoyed watching Lewis Hamilton this season. I know
he's exciting at least.
He's racing. He's actually going for it, and he's taking on teams. And sort of the latter end of this season, the battles between Hamilton and Massa have been fantastic. And seeing the actual intense rivalry, that's what you want in the sport. You want 2 people at the top of the game trying to win everything and trying to beat each other, which I don't think F1's had this season.
It's true. All right. Quick final story off to cricket, where poor old Sachin, he's still waiting, and the world is still waiting for that 100th 100. Missed out again against the West Indies.
6 run short. Unbelievable.
Out for 94 in the third and final test, so he won't even get another chance in this series.
I don't think there's a cricket fan in the world who doesn't want him to get that 100th 100. I mean, even when India were in England, I was watching it. I was thinking my ideal scenario here is an England win and Tendulkar gets his 100, because it would have been brilliant. It'll happen, but I know it seems like a mental block with him at the moment. It
does, doesn't it? It seems to have become such a big issue that it's kind of holding him back almost.
Yeah, I don't think personally he will retire until he gets that
definitely
100th Test century. Oh, that 100th century, because he's achieved the most any batsman's achieved in this sport. And the fact is now actually the media pressure and at home in India, I tell you, he's a god. He's an absolute god, and they want him to do so well. So hopefully he does do it. I think it would be a travesty if he doesn't come away with the 100th century. I think it will be one of those things that he'll never be able to, in interviews in the future down the line. So about not getting your 100th century, how does that make you feel? I think that would be awful to kind of tarnish his career.
It's one of those you don't want his career to sort of end on a bit of a damp squib. You want him to go out really on a high. Oh, we're just getting a little message here from producer James. Who won the 4 Nations?
New Zealand.
No, Australia.
Did,
what are we talking about? Australia.
Sorry.
Yeah, sadly England couldn't overturn that defeat to Australia in the earlier stages of the tournament. They lost the final. So yeah, Australia, worthy 4 Nations champions, but a great performance from England in the tournament, one that they can look back on and be proud of, I think. Should we have a quick look ahead at what's coming up this weekend?
I think Chelsea have got Wolves at home, which is obviously a big game for them.
Well, now it is.
It is now, exactly. They need a win. Wolves, I think if they're going to pick a game, if AVP was going to pick a game, Wolves at home would probably be one of the ones he'd have gone for. Personal interest for me as a Newcastle fan is Man United Newcastle.
It's also a personal interest for me because I'm actually going to be at the match tomorrow.
Are you really?
Yes, I will be.
All right.
Yeah.
Roving sports reporter, Jim. ATP one day, Old Trafford the next.
I'm just all over the place.
I'm quietly confident.
I think we'll come through with a win here, but Newcastle are dangerous, and I think they'll be annoyed after losing last week because they've been on a fantastic run of form. No one would have predicted they would have been sitting in in the top 4. Still at this time of the year, Pardew's done a good job, and I think they'll come out fighting tomorrow.
Yeah, we gave Man City a decent scare last weekend as well. And we're one of the few teams in the league at the moment who have built around a solid defence, which I thought it's the first time I've ever said that about Newcastle, I think. But Colaccini and Stephen Taylor, I think, have been the main reason for where we are on the table at the moment. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it.
Great. And let's have a quick look at the rugby as well. The Heineken Cup has finished for now, first round of fixtures. Lots of excitement there, lots to talk about. So the Premiership is back this weekend, and probably big game for Saturday, Northampton against Saracens. Saracens, of course, had a bit of a rocky start to the season, but back to winning ways now. Northampton have struggled in Europe so far, so let's see if they can pull it around in the Premiership. I think that's probably the game of the weekend for me. Gloucester-Leicester as well, although probably not as big a game as it would have been a few years ago. I think Leicester probably going to come out on top in that one quite comfortably. And, of course, our biggest shout for the weekend is the ATP Tour Finals final on Sunday. I think, are we going with possibly Federer-Songa in that one? Is that the anyone's game?
I think it's the game
prediction?
People want to see, isn't it?
I think that's probably the final the tournament deserves. Would you agree, Jay?
I definitely agree.
Our roving tennis reporter. Excellent. Well, in that case, I think that's about it from us. From anyone's game for this week. We'll be back next week with the same or possibly a different panel, yet to be decided. So wait and see on that one.
No chance. There's going to be substitutions after this debacle.
Got to get some squad rotation going on here, guys.
Yeah, Pearson's out.
I felt I've been sitting in an interview or something. Out on trial.
This is your audition.
Yeah.
We'll let you know in a few days how you did. But for now, I think it's goodbye from all of us, and we'll be back next Friday.